Well, tonight's topic is building self-esteem. I've talked about this before, but I want to carry the thought a little further than I have in the past. I guess it was 8 years ago or 10 years ago, I wrote an article on this subject for a certain non-Orthodox Jewish publication. So I did a little research, checking what contemporary organizations whose goals, one of whose goals, to foster self-esteem, say about the subject. What does it mean to have self-esteem, and what kinds of actions should you take, individual and institutional, to help promote self-esteem. And I was surprised to find the total absence of a particular factor which I think is very important. The standard treatment of the subject went something like this, especially if you're starting with someone with low self-esteem. First of all, protect the person from critique. Don't let anybody criticize him or contradict him or in any way indicate that what he does or what he says is less than good. Protect him from tests or trials which he might fail, and then he'll suffer the loss of self-esteem of failure. To make sure that whatever challenges he faces are challenges that he can easily overcome so that he can succeed. Make sure that nothing about him is criticized, even if it's not his performance, his height, his weight, his coordination, his the intonation with which he speaks. Your New York accent just drives me around the bend, I can't take that. And so on. No, nothing critical should be said of him, which could endanger his sense of worth. It was this kind of promoting a cocoon-like existence, both protected from any kind of critique and also protected from any kind of challenge at which he might fail. Now, in addition to the item that's left out, which I'll come to in a few minutes, but many people have remarked that this type of approach affects the opposite of which it intends, and it's obvious that on balance it produces a better situation than would have been produced without it. For example, unless the person who you are applying these rules to is colossally dumb and insensitive, he knows that he's getting special treatment because other people do get criticized, other people do get called down, other people do get challenged, other people are subject to tests at which they don't all pass. And somehow he's not getting that kind of treatment. He wonders, why is it that I'm getting this treatment and other people aren't? Who's going to do the job X? Somebody says, what about Peter? No, that's too hard for him. Oh, it's too hard for Peter. Guess Peter can't handle it, hey? That's going to make him feel good. That's going to make him feel worth, because he's not given challenges that are too hard for him. So protect him from that. They'll feel the love of the people who say, poor Peter, he hasn't got the ability to do this. Right? It's going to make him feel wonderful. Probably not. This is one of the downsides, which has been very much publicized about affirmative action. The diversity hire, as they say, would it comfort you to know that the pilot of your plane is a diversity hire? I think maybe you'd want to get another ticket, fly with somebody else. But he knows he's a diversity hire. So getting the job isn't going to build his self-esteem. It's going to continue to build his sense of failure. I saw one fellow, an outstandingly brilliant black fellow, and he, in his freshman week on campus, someone said to him, How did you get accepted? Did you put a smile on your application? He said, put a smile on the application? What are you talking about? So listen, you're a black guy. All you have to do is put a smile on your application and you get in. That's how black guys get in. Doesn't matter what your marks are, and so on. Well, he happened to be valedictorian of his high school, which was 95% white, and he had gotten high merit scores, and he got himself scholarships, and so on. But he said, what is everybody else in class thinking about me? How did I get here? Well, probably a diversity hire, the diversity place. So this doesn't really work to protect people and build them up. But here's the item which was missing from all of the resources that I saw. I'll give you an example of it. There's a publication called Jewish Action. It's an Orthodox Jewish publication. There was an article there about a woman who was describing how they prepared for Pesach. And she said, I gave to Yankee, her son, either 7 or 8 years old, something like that, responsibility for the bookshelves. I mean, taking down all the books and first cleaning the bookshelves and polishing them and then dusting all the books and putting it back up. That was his job in preparing for Pesach. This is hours and hours of job, and the ladders and the cloths and the solutions and everything else. It came the night of the Seder with 22 guests sitting there, and she said to all the guests, look at those bookshelves. That's Yankee's work. How do you think he felt at that moment? Wow. Look what I did in preparing for Pesach. And I'm only 7 years old, but I did it. Look at the result. One of the ways that you build self-esteem is by giving a person a sense of his own value. How do you sense your own value? Well, one way is you do things for other people that they find valuable. I'm valuable because I can create value for others. I can do good things for others. When I wrote this article, I made a suggestion. I said, because I remember seeing a psychological survey. Maybe there's a contradiction in terms. Who knows how reliable they are? Look at Retraction Watch if you want to get the sense of how well-founded results in psychology are. But they tested the so-called self-esteem of kids in kindergarten and graduates from high school. And the average was something like 80% of going into kindergarten have high self-esteem, and 5% have it when they're coming out of high school. So something's going wrong. Something's desperately wrong if you're crushing all these kids. So I said, I have a suggestion. Every child in every class, no matter who he is better at something than somebody else in the class. Assign an hour a week, 2 hours a week, where each child is assigned to spend time with a child who's less able than he is to help him improve. And when the enabler sees the progress in the one who he's working with, that will give him a sense of value. Because now, look at what he's doing. He's doing that because of what I gave him. What I presented for him, trained him, and I inspired him to do it. And of course, the reverse is right. There are 2 hours a week, and 1 hour, half of the class are givers and the others are receivers, and you reverse it. You can always find somebody for whom each person can give something. A better baseball swing, or how to sign his name better, or whatever it is. There's always something in which he's better. Giving is a tremendous way to build up the self-esteem of a person. Now, there are people who paid to be cynical and to use foolish, imaginative, pseudo-psychological. He's only doing that because, not that you could prove it or have any evidence for it, but it sounds slick, and you're inviting the other person to refute it, which is not the true method of science. He's only doing that for the praise. And so it really comes back to praise in the end anyway. It's because people praise him for doing something that's valuable for the other person. Well, that's not necessarily true. It might be that he himself gets the boost out of knowing that he made a difference to that person. Suppose that one way you could relieve the pain of burns is to apply a salve to the portions of skin that are burned, but the application would be very painful, So what they do is they induce temporary unconsciousness, and then the salve is applied, and then when he wakes up and the salve is soaked in, he feels better. And let's suppose that you have developed a salve that's more powerful than anybody else. And for whatever reason, you're the only one who knows the formula, and you go into a hospital and say, let me put the salve on these people, and you watch the result. Now, the way it's set up is you can only put it on when they're unconscious. So they don't see you. And then they awaken, and everybody's observing them, and they say, wow, this time he has much more comfort than he does when he puts on our ointment. Okay, I think that you could feel a sense of satisfaction that he's in less pain. Now suppose nobody's looking. Nobody believes in you, and nobody allows you to use the ointment. You sneak in the middle of the night, and you put this ointment on these patients. And in the morning, when they wake up, and the doctors and nurses come through and say, I don't know, this room seems to have a special charm. Because this room, the patients are much more comforted, and they heal faster and so forth and so on. And you're the only one who knows it. You're the only one who knows it. Wouldn't you feel tremendous satisfaction? These people are doing better because of what I did for them. So I think the idea that you're only doing it for the praise is another one of the just so stories, like in Darwinian evolution. I didn't say that. No, forget about it. We're doing that tonight. But they make up the stories. It was only virtuous that they have a lot of good imagination. There's no evidence that they're true. And in this case, you can see it. And by the way, a similar thing applies in a love relationship. And it has the same dynamics. I'm going to mention it because it applies to self-esteem and also applies to other things as well. You're in a love relationship and you do things for the other person, and you're thrilled to do things for the other person because you care about the other person. At least that's the way it seems to you. And someone says to you, how do you feel when you do it? Don't you feel wonderful about doing it? Yeah. The reason you feel wonderful about doing it is because you are a giver. You are a provider. And that's something good to be. So really, the payoff is in your own self-conception. And you're doing it for the sake of your own self-conception. Now that's dumb for another reason, which I'm going to come back to in Hashem in about 20 minutes. But let's say that that's what they say. Is there any way you could test, when you're in that kind of relationship, whether the things you do for the other person are done so as to earn yourself the self-image of a provider, which isn't a bad thing, of a provider, a giver, or whether it's built, at least in part, out of an impersonal desire that the other person have that good thing. Is there any way you could test that? Well, if you're a social scientist, you'll think of this on the spot, because you're a scientist. The answer is very simple. Suppose the other person receives it from somebody else, not from you. You aren't the giver. You aren't building yourself up. Are you happy for the other person? Does it make you happy that the other person's happy when you didn't give it? If it does, then at least part of your motivation is you care about the other person. You want the other person to be happy. You don't just want the reputation or self-image of being the giver who made the other person happy. And if that's the case in terms of what you give, it can be the case across the board. It's not that it's not that it got done by me that makes me happy, but when I do it, when I happen to do it, then it gives me self-esteem that I've done something important. I am valuable because I've made a difference to other people's lives. So the way one way to foster self-esteem is to enable people to do things that create value for others. I learned this idea from an essay of Rav Dessler's, although he wasn't talking about self-esteem. He was talking about the mitzvah you have to love other Jews. And the question everybody asks is, how can you command somebody to love? It's not something that's under your control. And the answer to all such questions, you can't snap your fingers or decide to love, but there are programs of activity which can bring you to love, like they bring you to the other mitzvahs of emotion, and that's what you're obligated to do. And one of the things he said to do is to invest in other people so that their success becomes something that you care about because you invested in it and you made it happen. And he says there that everyone has in him a principle of giving, because that's what the soul is. The soul is an expression of divinity in the world, Chelek Eloka B'Ba'al, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, people don't stress this, but it should be meditated on. What is the Kodesh Baruch Hu doing all the time? All and only giving. That's all he's doing. He's just giving. He created the world so as to be able to express his loving kindness. And you need recipients to express loving kindness. To express loving kindness means to benefit someone else, to make someone else's condition better. So there has to be someone else to do it for. That motivates the whole creation. So there is a givingness in the soul, and that givingness is satisfied only when there's a recipient who receives it. Whether the recipient knows it or not, whether the recipient says thank you or not. It's the soul's principle of giving which creates the sense of worth in the like Odessa says, suppose somebody does something for you, and when he does for you, he says to you, don't say thank you. How do you feel? Don't you feel frustrated? What do you mean don't say thank you? Because I'm not a sink for somebody's charity. If somebody does something good for me, that's nice. I do good things for other people as well. Thank you is a way of paying it back. And you're telling me don't pay it back? Why shouldn't I pay it back? Somebody gives you a gift for your birthday. What's the first thing you do? When's his birthday? Put it on your calendar. Because I'm not just here to take from other people. It's lovely that he thought of my birthday. I appreciate it very much. And I want to do the lovely thing also and think of his birthday. So this idea of giving to others, benefiting others, is something which is built into the person for the sake of the other. Because Baruch Hu is not giving to us for his sake. He doesn't get anything for selfish out of it. The word selfish there is an important qualification. He does it for us. When we do for others, we're doing what's divine. And that's certainly worthy of esteem. Indeed, my first wife put it this way. Some people have a principle of that people should be respected. All people should get at least a certain basic minimum respect. Why is that? Why should they be respected? As one person put it, well, you respect? I should respect you? What have you done to earn my respect? Some of these demonstrators, some of these progressives. Everybody deserves respect. Really, why? I don't respect stones. I don't respect certain types of animals, of criminals. Why should I respect you? So she said, the one thing that people have that's worthy of respect is the soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them, which is a kind of godliness in them. And that's worthy of respect. So, that being the case, it's a quality there which then can justify self-respect as well. Okay, so what we have here now is that the principle of giving. Giving because I now create value for other people's lives, whether they know it or not, or thank me or not, that can give me a sense of my own worth, because I'm doing something that really is valuable. So I have value that I'm giving, value that I'm giving to others. There's another element as well, I think. And this, I was just putting together recently. Let me start by talking for a moment about intrinsic value. Intrinsic value means something's valuable for itself. Maybe valuable in other ways as well, but at least in part, if you ask somebody, why are you going after that, or why are you doing that? The answer is, just because I do. It's not in service to something else. So, let's take the difference between money and listening to music. Why are you going after money? Hopefully because you're going to buy something with it. If you're going after money, you're not going to buy anything with it, you have a problem. You should probably get counseling. But if you're listening to music, the answer can be simply because I want to listen to music. Or because I enjoy listening to music. So why are you doing what you enjoy? Don't ask stupid questions. I enjoy it. That's why I do it. There's an end of the line there. Is that the only kind of end of the line there is? Just enjoyment? Are there other things where it's reasonable to say, I do this because that's what I do, because that's what's valuable, because that's what's right? How about you see me handing somebody $500, you say, hey, that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. Can I have $500? Why are we giving it to him? I said, because I borrowed it. He says, oh, you borrowed it. So what? So what? I borrowed the money. I'm paying it back. Yeah, but why are you paying it back? Because when you borrow money, that's what you do. You pay it back. I mean, that's what you have to do. You're obligated to do that. I'm doing what I'm obligated to do because it's right. And that can be the end of the story. So not only pleasure is, so to speak, an end of the motivational story, doing what's right can also be an end of the motivational story. That's two. And I think there's a third. You see a person reading books about, let's say, loss, human loss, parents, siblings, sickness, that sort of thing. And you ask him, why are you reading books like that? What's in that subject for you? He says, well, I'll tell you. When I was younger, I was very influenced by someone named Donald Trump. And I was very impressed by what he said about, I forget his first name, McCain, the senator, who was a prisoner in Vietnam for 5 years. He was a soldier. He was a prisoner of the Viet Cong for 5 years. And Trump said, I don't like people who get captured. I like people who don't get captured. And many people, myself included, thought that was brutally vicious and low. Here's a guy who's fighting for his country, believes in the values of his country, he's risking his life, and he suffered torture for 5 years, and you think he's a loser because he got captured? What do you think, he volunteered to get captured? It's just absolutely low. But at that time, I heard it as people are successes and people are failures. A person who's captured isn't fighting, he's not advancing the war, he's a failure and he's a loss. Don't like people like that. Then I began to realize there's something wrong with that. Do I really feel contempt for people in the hospital who can't work at a job because of their illnesses? Don't I feel sorry for them? And then the way some of them bear their illnesses, sometimes it's brave and it's noble. And don't I find that somewhat inspiring? Maybe I'm making a mistake here. Maybe my whole attitude is based on a mistake. And I know that when you read about people, especially, let's say, if it's a novel by a gifted writer, so you participate in their lives. You live vicariously what they're going through. And that can increase your sensitivity. It can increase your ability to identify. I know today nobody reads, they would look at a video. But probably the video wouldn't have as much of an effect as the reading. That's my prejudice. At any rate, he's trying to increase his sensitivity. Why? Because he wants to be a different kind of person. He realized that something about who he is isn't ideal. Maybe it's even low. Maybe it's even despicable. And he wants to be a different person. Now, so that motivates him to do the reading that he's doing, and it motivates him to seek out the psychological literature, which sometimes helps, sometimes hurts, on the subject. He wants to be a different kind of person. Now I ask him, why do you want to be a different kind of person? The answer can be, listen, I've lived 38 years. And for my first 20 years, I thought a certain way. And then I realized I was short-sighted and uninformed. I have a broader picture of what human life offers as possibilities. And it seems to me that this is a better way to be. And since it's a better way to be, I want to be like that. Yeah, but why is being better like that something you want to do? And it can be said, because it's better, that's all. It just is better. It doesn't make me more money, or I sleep better, or lower my blood pressure, or no, it's a stopping point in motivation. There are certain ideals that people develop in terms of ideals for themselves, and they invest in trying to move in that direction because that's a worthwhile direction to move in. And again, so now, I want to ask two questions here. First of all, let's suppose a person realized this and worked on himself to develop in himself this quality which he now appreciates as a very valuable quality. Shouldn't he feel good about that? Shouldn't that give him self-esteem? Without benefiting others. This may have nothing to do with benefiting others. It may just be becoming a better person. So here, it would be the idea of an accomplishment. An accomplishment is a success which, in normal terms, gives a person self-esteem. But now I want to take this thought a step further. What does he feel about being sensitive to other people's struggles under adversity? Does he feel just, I would be better if I would have more sensitivity for how other people bear their struggles? Or does he feel identifying with how people bear their struggles is a valuable human characteristic? Is his intuition here personal or is it general? And I think there are some of both kinds. Sometimes a person will say, I would be happier and my life would be better off if I would have quality Q, but other people might be indifferent to it, and maybe even for other people it would be damaging. But sometimes the feeling is, you're a better person if you have this quality. You're better off if you have this quality. Why? Well, for one thing, it realizes a certain capacity in the human mind and in the human soul and the human heart, and that capacity makes you human rather than animal, good rather than bad, virtuous rather than vicious. It adds to your stature and value as a human being. So now, if that's his feeling, you get another consequence. Not only is it a success when I promote this quality in myself, but just having the quality, no matter how it got there, puts me in a better position. I'm a better person because the quality's there, not because I earned it or created it for myself. The word better here now doesn't carry the moral sense of deserving of merit or deserving of reward and so forth and so on. That is usually applicable to things that you do for yourself, things that you create for yourself. But you're in a better position as a human being. You're a better human being. And then, if you have qualities like that, even ones you didn't create for yourself, you can say, I'm somebody, I'm a valuable person because I have valuable qualities. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about, which, what I'm talking now about is what something that's called virtue ethics. And it's controversial because in philosophy, I'd say almost everything is controversial. So if you look for critics, you'll find critics. But that doesn't mean it's wrong to express it, because if you look for supporters, you'll find supporters also. And almost everything in philosophy is confused that way. I happen to have a quality which I did absolutely nothing to develop. Just, I can't say I was born with it, because 2-week-old babies don't have qualities like this. But it was my genes and the influences around me. I turned out not to have any care about my social status in an educational situation. Top of the class, or the bottom of the class, older than everybody, younger than everybody, cost me nothing. So I became a Baal Tshuva, and I spent 1 year in yeshiva in Merkaz Rav Kook, and then when I got my doctorate, I went to university and taught at university for 10 years, and came to Eretz Yisrael. So I was, I guess, 38 at that time, something like that. And the yeshiva gave me an opportunity to spend 1 year in full-time learning. And I went to Tzvi Kushelevsky, great Rosh Yeshiva. I was 10 years older than the average boys in the shir. I knew considerably less than they did. He has good students, they were bright. And I found it very difficult to understand the shir. I was sitting with kids who would have been my students in my beginning classes. I was 10 years a professor of philosophy. I published a research book with Oxford University Press. And I'm a beginner with kids 10 years younger than I am. It cost me nothing. Nothing. Not a moment's thought, who am I? I'm older and I have more prestige. What am I doing in the beginner's class? Nothing. I'm learning. I'm learning new things, coming to understand new things, getting new insights. I was thrilled with every minute that I was there. I think that's a very valuable quality. Certainly did great things for me. And I don't deserve any credit for it, but it's still a valuable quality. So if I think of who I am and whether I have anything that makes me worthwhile, that quality gives me a sense of being worthwhile. And if I should credit it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and simply say that it was a gift that he gave to me, it's a very valuable gift. And when you have a very valuable gift, you're richer than you were before. So if a person can look at himself and say, what are the qualities that I have and what are qualities which I could honestly evaluate as important qualities, then that can also contribute to a person's self-esteem. There's another quality that I was developed totally on automatic pilot, and that was not to give up. Not to give up. I can go back over the same question 100 times. 10 years, 20 years. Not all day long, every day, obviously. It's not obsessive in that sense, but never give up on it. Never give up on it. Even searching for something in the house. I can look through the same set of drawers and the same set of shelves 10 times. And very often, I do find it in the end. So that I think to myself, what a great gift that I have this quality of not giving up. Just not giving up. And that's a good quality. And if I have that good quality, then I'm not devoid of merit, not devoid of value, because I have this good quality. So you're talking about building self-esteem. You can, if you're close enough to the person to sit and talk and to share, ask the person, what do you think of yourself? What are your good points? What are your bad points? And then bring out to the person the things that he feels that are good about himself. Let him get to the point where he understands it's not just good for me that I'm like this, it's that I have this quality, and this is a good quality to have. It'd be good if a complete stranger had it also. It's a good quality. And then say to the person, well, you have this good quality, so you have something about you that's worthy of esteem. It's worthy to be respected and prized because it's in fact a good quality. So this is another way to build up a person's self-esteem. One of these qualities, which I think you can stimulate in a person, or you can draw. I don't think you can create brand new qualities. I don't know if we can do that psychologically, but you can certainly develop them and strengthen them. And that is she'ifas, ideals. Towards the end of my period of time in teaching university, and I would ask students about what their hopes are, what their dreams are. The whole horizon had collapsed on them. Like, for example, I would ask them about their parents. I said, what about you? I said, I could never do what my father did, or my mother. I could never do that. You're 21 years old, right? How do you know that in 60 years you couldn't do that? I don't know. I could never measure up to them. I thought to myself, wow. When I was 19, I could do anything. Climb Mount Everest, swim under the English Channel holding my breath, fly to the moon. What do you can't? How do you know what you can't do? Your whole life is ahead of you. So he talked to a person about hopes and dreams and ideals. And here, people have to make a crucial distinction between standards and ideals. And confusing them causes a lot of pain and unnecessary pain in growth and development. A standard is something which, if you fail, you should feel guilty. It's the law you set for yourself for the performance that you expect and require of yourself to turn out. So if you fail it, you feel guilty. Ideals, you better not be able to live up to your ideals. If they are, they're lousy ideals. An ideal is something which inspires you, and you measure yourself on growing closer to it. It lifts you up because of its nobility, because of its greatness. But it's precisely great because you're not close to it. And you violate your ideals all the time, but you come to violate them less and in less serious ways, and the ideal leads you to make the effort to grow closer to satisfying your ideals. So then the point to make to the person is, you have ideals. It means you haven't given up on yourself. You haven't made your peace with where you are. That in itself is a tremendously valuable human reality. I used to teach, I'll make one remark, now I'll take a question. I used to teach every year Elul just before Rosh Hashanah. You know, people say that comes Yom Kippur and they confess their wrongdoings, their crimes, and when you get old enough, you know, I've done that the last 10 Yom Kippurim in a row. It's the same one every time. And, you know, it gets kind of depressing and you begin to give up on yourself because you see you're not changing. So I have a whole explanation. You're not the same person you were last year. Things happened in between. You've matured more. You know, don't give up on yourself. But then I read a passage in the Siva Shalom, the previous Lama Rabbi, and he says the fact that you haven't given up, it means you're spiritually alive. Let alone whether you're different and probability of changing is bigger now and so forth and so on. I thought, oh, wait a second, that's a new insight. And I applied that to something which you find in the Mussar Sfarim, which I think also gives an insight which at least I hadn't heard before. There's a saying in the Mussar movement that if you're not going up, you're going down. Now, I thought about that, and I thought to myself, why is that? My description of progress, which I think I read in Rav Dessler, is that there are periods of growth, and then there's a plateau, where you sort of integrate the growth that you've achieved, and then you go up more. And on the plateau, you're not doing anything new, not taking on any more mitzvahs or anything else to do. What do you mean if you're not going up, you're going down? So then I thought of the analogy that they use, and then I think I had an insight on that. The analogy they use is this: take a fish and throw it into a moving stream. If it goes upstream, you know it's alive. If it goes downstream, it could very well just be floating with the current and dead. So there you are, up, down. So I want to ask a question, my own question. Suppose it's not going up, it's not going down, it's staying in the same place. Is it alive or dead? It's alive. It's got to be alive, because otherwise it'd be floating downstream with the current, right? So there it seems to me that in terms of your position in the stream, there is a middle condition of not going up and not going down. But then I thought, maybe that's not what the Bali was meant when they said, if you're not going up, you're going down. They're not talking about your external observance. How many hours of learning are you doing, or how many Mentorship are you, how many commentaries are you studying in the Talmud? What they meant is your inner growth in strength or loss of strength. And there the analogy is good, because the fish is not going upstream, it's still swimming in order to stay at the same place in the stream, which means that it's exercising its muscles and adding to its strength. And it could very well be that with your muscles, either you're going up or going down. Either you're exercising your muscles and strengthening them, or you're relaxing and you're going down. So it's the inner reality that counts, not the outer reality. It's that inner reality. So that's what the Rabbi is talking about. You haven't given up. You still have hope that you'll be better. It's still worthwhile for you to try to be better. Even if 10 years in a row you made that effort and it didn't succeed, you haven't given up. Then you're still spiritually alive. Talk to a person about this. Now, you can find people, this isn't a guarantee to work, because the person sometimes gives up. They do give up. Then the goal to give self-esteem is to to try to wake them up and give them hope that they can do better. That's the way to do it. Not give them false compliments and protect them from criticism and only give them things that they can't fail at. That just sends the message that you're a loss. So, and this I think is, it depends on a person's condition in life. I've read about drug addicts, alcoholics, who've been through rehabilitation. I read about one guy who went through the same rehabilitation twice, and twice relapsed. And he said, it's over. It's over. I just can't do it. I know it's terrible to be an addict. That's what I am. I can't do it. Then I read about a new program, which was for people who failed at this program, and the success rate was something like 80%. That's what they said. And I read about people trying to convince them, look, okay, you failed at it twice. This program is for you. This program is succeeding for people who failed at that program. Isn't it worthwhile to try? And his answer was simply, I can't. I can't build up the hope and build up the energy and so forth and so on. So at this point, the question was raised, maybe it'd be better to, knock him out, tie him up, and ship him off and lock him in a cell, because if the therapy really helps, he'll be overwhelmingly grateful to you for the rest of his life. Whereas as it is, he's likely to die in a few years in a stupor and terrible disappointment of a wasted life. So the idea of restoring that kind of hope, restoring those kinds of she'ifas, how do you say she'ifas in English? The
ideals.
Well, it's more than that. It's a kind of longing for that thing that you don't have, and together with hope that you could achieve it. 1 second. Ugh. 1 second. Yeah. Anyway, those are some of the notes on self-esteem. You wanted to ask a question a while ago.
I wanted to ask about that definition you gave of standards.
Yeah.
Just what was the phrasing that you gave?
Distinguish standards from ideals.
Yes.
A standard is something which, if you fail it, you'll feel guilty. You define it as a failure. Violating a standard is a failure, and it generates guilt. And appropriately so. I hope there's nobody left who thinks that all guilt is the enemy and the idea is to live guilt-free and so forth and so on. An ideal is something which you fail all the time. If you are not failing your ideals, you have the wrong ideals. An ideal is something which, because of its nobility, because of its great value, it inspires you to want to grow in that direction. But while you're growing in that direction, you're failing to live up to it, of course, because it's very high beyond you. So you should fail your ideals, and you should not fail your standards. Standard is a law you give for your behavior at the present time, and an ideal is something which is supposed to inspire you to grow in that direction. Yeah.
How do you develop a distinct perception, distinct understanding of what your standards should be and what your ideals should be, so that you're not feeling inappropriately guilty for?
Okay, I mean, once you hear the difference, I think there can always be a pathological case, but I don't think it's too difficult to, something which you feel is under your control. So you could rightfully ask yourself to live up to it. Can be a standard. Something which you don't have the self-control to work with consistently can be an ideal. There is a program, for example, Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is very, very difficult to guard what you say consistently. And some people say start with a couple of hours a day and grow from there. So, for example, you start from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. No, come on, be serious. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Okay, those are my Lashon Hara free hours. Somebody calls at 3:30 and says, "Did you hear what happened to Philip?" I say, "Can you call back at 4:15? Because that's my time for Lashon Hara." Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if you ask yourself to do a complete job at the outset, you just fail and you give it up. You're much better off keeping 2 hours a day when that becomes established as a fixed habit, then you can expand it to more. It's a gradual process. So the ideal there is to be in total control of Lashon Hara, and it may be a 5-year ideal. You have a question?
Someone who doesn't have like a she'ifa, a goal, or you can call them lost nowadays, how would you build their self-esteem? You ask them what they want and then say they don't know. They're just in a very...
Okay, so this you're asking a psychological question now, and I'm not trained as a psychologist. Maybe I should thank God that I'm not trained. As you can see, I'm somewhat skeptical of the psychological profession. But my first wife had a very interesting way of dealing with this. Try to get the person to help somebody else. It could be even hypothetical. You say, I know somebody who has this and this problem and is not succeeding in dealing with it. What would you suggest? And if you're clever enough, you can make the problem isomorphic, similar in structure, but different in content, so the person doesn't pick up that you're really talking about him. And you get an answer, and then don't pounce on him and say, see, that's you! No, that's stupid. Right? Wait a couple of weeks and say, I was thinking about what you said about so-and-so and how the person should, do you think that could be applied to other people, other cases? Try to let the person, if at all possible, think of it himself, because I think it's natural to think in those terms. And I think that, what my first wife was getting at, among other things, is that the kinds of defenses that you built up for yourself, you don't picture them in other people. So you allow yourself to think more broadly and more openly about what you would say about other people. And then you can draw it back on yourself. This, by the way, is a psychological technique which works very broadly. You think when you ask a person a question, what kinds of prejudices are going to get in the way of his giving a true answer for himself? I don't mean he's lying. And then try to defeat them. And here's another example of it. What are our obligations? Now you ask an American what his obligations are, and they say, don't tell me what to do, don't push me around, I live my own life, I follow my own dreams, and so forth and so on. You say, okay. So don't ask him what his obligations are. Ask him what obligations he thinks people who work for him have, or people who borrow his car have, or people who are teaching his children have. What obligations do they have for him, to him? Oh, you'll get a list. You'll get a list without any difficulty whatsoever. Because the self-protectiveness of don't tell me what to do doesn't apply, because these are the obligations that other people have. You'll get a nice long list. And then you can use it. You can use it backwards. So you have to think about the way in which people are going to react psychologically and take account of that in your question and find a parallel question with the same upshot, but framed in such a way. And I'll tell you where I got this idea from ultimately. There's a description of Gehenna, what happens when a soul needs rectification. And one description of it was this. The soul goes into a situation where it has complete amnesia, that is to say, no identity for its history, and then the soul is shown its own life history, which it doesn't recognize as itself, and it has to judge the actions that it sees in that life history. Good, bad, different, so forth and so on. And then at the end of that, memory is restored. You think about what that would be like, because when you don't know it's you, then you judge with severity and with no holds barred, and and failure and so forth and so on, and all the rationalizations and self-justifications that we have, which protect us from the severity of our own failures, aren't there because you don't know it's you. And then you have to live with the fact that it is you. So that could be very painful. But it's also very realistic. Begin to see yourself as you really are, rather than the fantasies that you build up, which could be worse or better than what you were. Because some people don't just protect themselves from failure, they import on themselves failures which aren't really failures, or they're greatly exaggerated. So it's a question of how you present the issue to the other person, to try to develop the sensitivity that you want to develop. I think that in the micro, people hope for things and do things to accomplish things all the time. You run to catch the bus. Why do you run? Because maybe I'll make it, and then I don't want to wait for the next bus. Okay, so you have a hope to make it. You don't think you're condemned not to make it, and you make the effort, not knowing whether you succeed or fail, and that's normal. Really difficult if a person so consistently lost vision in himself that he didn't make any efforts to do anything and just waited for charity. That would be very so. You work on the parts where they're still there, or where he would give advice to other people, and then you try to graft it onto the situation that he's in. The bottom line here is that you have to be realistic, and you can't create true self-esteem unless there's something truly valuable about the person. And whether it's meritorious because he did it for himself, or it's valuable because it's a good quality, it's got to be really meritorious, really valuable. And when you reveal to him or instill in him a quality that is really valuable, then you can build self-esteem. Yeah.
Just one last thing. So you're saying it's a lot easier to work on one's personal self-esteem with a mentor or a buddy who can point out good things in oneself to help him along the way.
I think that's true. Yes, a mentor is very important because you've learned that you're not a very good judge of yourself. And you're prejudiced in your own case. You're like a relative giving testimony, even though those of testimony don't do this. Okay. At any rate, you're not objective in your own case, and to have somebody else to talk to who can if you need a mentor in sports, you certainly need a mentor in self-development, and everybody knows that you can't trust your own judgment as to what you should do in sports. You need a coach. That's an expertise which is different from being a good athlete. Okay.